lanes, and they'll be different for you guys, and we think about them every single day, and it just gives us some real guardrails going forward. The first lane for us is this online lane. How do we get better there? Now, let's be honest. We can talk theologically about online worship, and online is here to stay. It just is. The reality of a digital format for the church is here to stay. COVID, I think, is the great accelerator. Does that make sense to you? This is where the church was headed in many ways, right or wrong, but this COVID is a great accelerator. Think about the way people shop today. People shop totally different today because of COVID than they did a year ago, but that was moving that way anyways, right? People work differently today. I mean, most folks are working from home. That's going to, one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer in our city, they're not going back. State Farm's not going back. All those folks are going to work from home. That changes the footprint. That was happening anyways. COVID just sped it up, all right? So we think about online. So what we think about online, we think about it this way. How do we get better every single week? We think about from a worship standpoint. Now here's what when I talk, you don't have to agree with it. That's okay. And just even disagreeing is good. It makes you think. Back when I first started, people, consistency in worship, people hear about the average person about every other week, Now, for us, it's about every 4.5 weeks. So we've lost consistency. Now, is that good? No. It is, though, right? So how do we react to that? So we think having a good online experience can create some greater consistency with our people as they worship. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about. We're thinking about how we can make that better. We've pivoted some of our staff, and one of the things that sometimes people say, and I don't know, people say, well, that's easier for you guys to do because you're at a larger church, and the answer to that is you're probably right because of staffing. But technology is such today that there are so many people in your church that have experience video editing and doing things that would love to do that and to serve. So I just don't think it's right to say we can't do it that way because we're a smaller church. You really can, but we have to think about that different. One of the things that we're learning about online experience, and man, we look at the data really hard, and it hurts your feelings, right? Because nobody knows how to measure their online experience, right? They think they do, but really don't. People tell you, man, we had 3,000 people. We had 3,000 views in our first service. No, you didn't. Right? I mean, they may have seen that it popped up for 5 seconds on Facebook and they counted that, but when you really get at the data, we're trying to look at how many minutes people stayed with us. Painful, man. Yeah. Painful. And so what we're learning is we just pivoted. A different staff member is hosting. We do a different intro. We do a different exit. We try to have a tighter message. You have to be just a little clearer. That's the thing about preaching. Today, preaching is different. You're preaching to, even right now, we got folks that maybe somebody watching online, so you're preaching to the people sitting out in front of you. We're preaching to satellite campus, right or wrong, whatever you think about that. And we're also preaching to people who are watching online. And then you're people that might be sharing that a week later to some. So you have to be super tight in what you say because people they're just in and out, right? They'll click off. So we're trying to think shorter, tighter, rethink it. When you're preaching, we're just preaching to a group of people. Like if I'm struggling, like you said, well, you're struggling right now. Yeah, I'll just kind of wheel it around and get back to where I'm going. But you know what? When you're online, man, it has got to be super tight. So you've got to think through what you're doing in just an incredible way. The other thing that we're finding is we're trying to create shorter experiences that people can share. Shelby knows this. Shelby and I have known each other for a lot of years. We went to a big EE conference years ago, back in 1942, I think it was. We beat people up about evangelism in the Baptist church for as long as I know. We aren't any better today than we were then. About 95% of people who come to our churches have never shared Jesus with anybody. We kind of wonder why we're in a mess, right? So it's just not working very well. I think one of the things that we're trying to do is leverage short content that we can create, evangelistic content that we can create that they can share with their friends, their family members. You've got, think about this, at New Vision, we're not trying to have this national brand or national presence. We're not trying to compete with these guys that are out there, the Andy Stanleys of the world, right? That's not who we're trying to compete with. Who we understand is our people have family and friends in different parts of the country, and they have people they know that don't know Jesus, and we want to equip them with something digitally that's very short that they can kind of send to them, and it's a way to share the gospel. So we're spending some time. One of the things we're doing, if you want to take a look at it, like for Good Friday, we're trying to leverage really high impact days. We shot a Good Friday experience, and we shot that kind of on location, just setting in the suffering of the cross for about 20 minutes, really looking at some key passages, and just hopefully, it's produced in a way that they can share that with a friend, expose somebody, and that's a win for us. Like if one person shares the gospel digitally that way, that's a win. For us, one of the things, just doing a daily podcast. Everybody's been trying to figure out how do you stay connected with your people through this pandemic. Just daily podcast. We've seen the greatest traction relative to that than anything else. That's just 5 minutes, just a devotion, and like we're criticized for multiple things. That's okay. But one of the things that we try to do, we if we're working through a book of the Bible, we're about to go through Hebrews after Easter. So I'm going to touch on a good percentage of Hebrews. We just finished Proverbs, but we're going to use the podcast, the daily podcast, to fill in the gaps and cover all those spaces so that we can really provide somebody, if they want just a systematic study through a book of the Bible, we'll just do that. And we're leveraging different staff members to do that, and they love that. You can leverage key members of your church to do that, to work through that. So people love that. I mean, the average guy, one of the greatest stories from the pandemic is one of our guys. He's a new believer. He works at Rich's Foods. He sits in his truck every morning before he goes in, and he listens to the podcast before he goes in. Here's a dude who has lost his last year's Easter egg, an alcoholic, losing his marriage, has come to faith in Christ, and he's in the Word every single day. Now, we can tell that guy, you need to be reading your Bible. He's probably not going to do it, but you give him something right there, and he takes it. And so the podcasts have been really effective for us. Let me say this, and Wes, will you do me a favor? My time's up. Will you just say cut or something? Because I'm a moron. Here's a phrase as it relates to groups. I'm a groups guy. Like I tell our people, if you've ever been at New Vision, if you only have 1 hour to give, I want you to give it in a group. Because I know that's where people are going to be taken care of. And that's where people are going to people grow. Like I learned some stuff in the last 20 minutes sitting at the table over there, right, with these guys. Because we learn here, right? We don't learn as well in rows. I'm not saying that preaching is important. Make my living doing that. It is important. But I want our people to connect inside of groups. And we're going to talk a little bit about burnout. One of the reasons why pastors burn out, we can blame the church, but it's really our fault. Because we try to be the hero and we try to do everything, And I called a lady last night on my way back from Nashville, just lost her husband suddenly. And I said, Marcia, I'm just so sorry. And she's weeping. And she said, what you say about groups is true. She said, we always laugh. You talk about groups so much, we get sick of hearing it, but it happened. She said when James had a heart attack last Thursday while we were in our Thursday night service, he had a heart attack. She said while I was waiting for the ambulance to get there, my son was working with him, I called the lady in my small group, and I called Peggy. Peggy sent out a message to the rest of our group. She said when I got to the hospital, they were already there. He said, they beat us to the hospital. And she said, I don't know where I would be right now without them. I got home that night from church on Thursday night about 8:30. I got the call. They were already coming back from the hospital. I didn't go, and she didn't need me, right? You may disagree with that, but you can't meet all the needs in your church. That's why pastors get burned out. But you see, developing those small groups. Now, here's what I want to say about online, right? I'm going to bring this back together. Some of you are like, what happened? We were talking about online stuff, and now you're talking about groups. You know what? People will never run out of excuses, right? They will run out of time. Do you agree with that? Here's the big one. Look, I'm just sick. I got Zoom fatigue. Have you heard that? Everybody's got Zoom fatigue right now. Okay. All right. So in small groups, here's the thing. Small groups, if you miss 1 week in a group, it's like missing 6. You agree with that? I've been leading groups forever. I'm leading a men's group right now. But I love technology. So we think about how can we harness online for our groups. I'm telling you, this can help us. We do hybrid stuff right now. The group that I lead tonight at 6 o'clock is a men's group, and we'll meet in our regular room at the church, and we will also have a TV screen, a laptop, and guys will log in. Last week, perfect example. Last week, one guy's on a business trip in Charlotte. He's sitting in his hotel room. He's connected, right, with us. Another guy is in San Antonio, Texas on a business trip. He just wouldn't have been here in the past. He'd have missed a week, and a week is like 6 weeks. You know, your groups are probably like ours. The first week we start back at the beginning of the semester, I mean, it's just powerful. We get all fired up. Man, we got a ton of people. Next week, just boom, 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 boom. And then at the end, we can't get our wives to show up, right, for a group. That didn't go over well. But anyways, that's kind of us. But the third guy, Ronnie, he works at Nissan. They kept him over late. So it's 6:15. He is just getting in his car. So I see him on the screen in his truck, right, with his phone there. And he's with us, right? So those are three guys that would not have been there if not that. Now, is it perfect? Do they have a perfect experience? Is it just as perfect as them sitting in the room? No. But they're there, and we're able to check in with them, pray for them, see what's going on. So we think about that. How can we leverage technology going forward to help with our groups? I tell you another thing. Young couples, reaching young couples. You know why reaching young couples in groups is really hard, especially for a church that doesn't have all the space that they need? Childcare. You talk to people all over the country. It's tough, man. Nobody has been able to skin that cat. Right? Think about it. A young couple for us, here's what they have to do. Okay, their group meets on Tuesday night, so he gets home from work, she gets home from work, they get the kids something to eat, they drive 20 minutes. We used to be 20 minutes, now in Murfreesboro it's 40 minutes because of traffic, right? It's a mess. Every time you sit in traffic, you know something will help you. Praise God for the new people He's sending here that we can reach for Jesus. It will help your mindset with traffic. It's not working for me yet, but I think it will. Just keep saying that. They got to drive across town. They got to drop their kids off, child care. Then they got to run back and spend an hour and 15 minutes in their group. Then they got to go back and get their kids. They're not going to do it. It's too much. They're just not going to do it, right? So, but what we're seeing is young couples today, they put their kids to bed at like 4:30. Have you noticed that? Like, we never could get our kids to bed. They put them to bed so early. So 7:30, their kids in bed, and they do a Zoom group. Now, is it perfect? No, but it's better than nothing, right? Their kids are in bed. They're able to gather around the laptop. They're able to pray, encourage, and look at some scripture. So here's my point. I'm telling our staff, I don't want to hear Zoom fatigue. Everybody's got an excuse, right? Right? You want to be a loser, just keep living by excuses, right? If you want to be somebody who's successful, you got to push past some of those, right? And so I think we can use that for groups. So we're thinking about it every single day. How can we leverage our online platform better? As we think about re-entry, so the first lane is how we think about online. We talk about that every day. Second lane for us is just re-entry. Re-entry is an every single week thing. We're going to be dealing with re-entry for the next 2 years, I think, right? Like I think we think, you know what? Yeah, well, everybody keeps giving us these false dates, right? I told our staff everything I've said has been wrong, but so we have to think about re-entry. We're thinking about there are probably six different pockets of people that we're trying to reach that have all types of different impact related to COVID, and having messaging for them is really different, right? And so we have to think through all of that. So re-entry every single week. What's the incremental change we need to make this week for re-entry, right? We're thinking about that every single week, and that's everything from how we greet people, how we're seating people, how we work in transitions, how we dismiss people, you know, what adjustments can we make for seating. We're thinking about, Easter's going to be a mess, right? Because do you really know what's going to happen on Easter? We're trying to follow the guidelines as far as seating, and and we've got 7 different offerings at our Battlefield campus, 7 different offerings, but they all want to come at 2 different times, right? And so people are going to do what they want to do. So we don't, so we're trying to think about that and learn. So re-entry is second lane. What do we learn? How can we make some incremental changes? And I hope. Let me just tell you, if you're still in ministry at the end of after a year of this pandemic, you're a hero of mine, and I mean that. This has been hard. So you're doing a great job. I want to encourage you. I found that pastors a lot of times may not be the most honest people about numbers. Have you ever noticed that? Whatever that is. We try to be honest about ours because I think it might encourage somebody else. Well, everybody's like, how are you guys doing? We're doing great. Well, we're not. We're at about 45% of pre-COVID numbers back in worship. That's where we are, 45%, right? So that means about 55% of people pre-COVID, most of them, we haven't seen them in a year. That's tough, right? Now, are they connected online? No. So we got to keep working on re-entry. We're not doing a great job. That's why I hope at the second part of this, I learned something from you guys. And then the third lane for us, in defining our lanes, we want to think about online as lane number 1. We want to think about re-entry. Third lane for us is special events. We think with this 55% of our folks that aren't back, what are some things that we've never done before that might give them a chance to come back and sort of dip their foot in the water in a safer environment, and they have a good experience. So we've done some different things, and I'll throw those things out at you, and it may not be that you would do any of those, but do you understand the point in that? What's something that's a different event that might capture their attention, and we might get them back? And what we're hearing from some of those folks is this is our first time back, and it wasn't that bad. We felt okay. We've done these, this may not go over well, we've done these night of healings, and really what they are, they're just an old-fashioned prayer service, right? We just invite folks, well, you're struggling in your marriage, you got a medical issue, whatever you've got. We've had testimonies that night. We just do them on Sunday night, and we just have some worship, and we just have some really concentrated prayer for all these different areas. And we've seen people come back to that haven't come back to anything else that we've had. So we're trying to think about what's a third lane events, what's something that we've never done that we can kind of do right now that might help folks to do that. So we think about that. We've done drive-by stuff for widows, for children, for staff kids, where we've got kind of a gift bag for them, and just do some different stuff. So that's defining a lane. Number two is finding, I want to talk specifically about this, finding your next gear in ministry. So I'm changing gears. But let me tell you, every one of us, I think, to be successful, we got to find our next gear, right? We got to hit the clutch, and we've got to change. We've got to come out of this different as leaders. If we want our churches to be different, and don't we? Yeah. I was asking there. It wasn't rhetorical. Yeah. We don't want to go back to normal. Well, that's got to start with me, right? So I got to find my next gear. And what happens when you're driving your vehicle back those standard shift days, right? I had an old Ford truck, 3 on the tree. You wind it out. When you hear that thing winding out, it's time to do what? Time to change gears. And so pastors are wound out. It's time to change gears. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work harder. You have to work smarter in many ways. Here's my point. I think we've learned some things during COVID that are going to help us find our next gear. Let me give you some stats. And this is from a group called Soul Shepherding. And these stats really are pretty frustrating and discouraging, I guess, for me, about pastors and pastors burnout. 77% of pastors, according to this survey, said they feel like they have a poor marriage. 44% don't take a regular day off. 31% don't get any consistent exercise. 37% are dissatisfied with their personal prayer life. 80% feel like their ministry has a negative impact on their families. So I think most guys in ministry, we need to find our next gear. We need to do it differently, right? We got to find out, how do we push the clutch, and how do we do it differently? I think we've learned some things during COVID. I mean, many of you guys have probably worked from home. I mean, we're looking at for our staff, how can we allow a day or two of the week for them to work from home, and that's a good experience for them and for their family. My wife and I have spent more time together over the last year than probably we ever have in our marriage, and so we've decided to really make some changes, and it's been an amazing thing. One of the things that we've done, and this was my wife's idea, and I think it was birthed out of just spending more time with her. In some ways, it's almost felt like a sabbatical in some ways. I mean, because there hasn't been I know it's been challenging, but it hasn't had all of the same things that we've had to do. There was a season when we were just doing online only. So I preach 4 times on a weekend when I preach, and I feel terrible until about Monday night. I think if Wes will ever let me, I'd love to come back and talk about the physiological effects of preaching, because I don't think we talk about it, because it'll eat your lunch. I feel terrible until about Monday night. But when I was just preaching one time, we were just videoing, I was a new man, right? Amy was like, gosh, who are you? I can even talk to you on Monday, And I just felt better, right? Because preaching, you deplete your body of really adrenaline, right? Because it's fight or flight. You deplete your body of adrenaline. It takes some time for that to build back up, and you feel lousy. And it really... And then we got to go again on Thursday. Like Thursday's the new Sunday for us, right? Got to be a Sunday's coming. We say Thursday's coming. Well, so you get back in the office on Monday morning, and like the clock is sped up, So, but just having to preach once a week, it was life changing. So some changes. The new gear for me is I just let our teaching pastor. He's preaching more. He's teaching more. I had an ego that was so messed up that I thought if, unless I preached, church wasn't going to grow. That was wrong. People like him better than they do me. Right? I was out the other day and somebody came up to me and they said, who's preaching Sunday? And I said, well, I am. They said, oh. Okay. Better, right? And Shelby and I were talking about this. I don't know what you think about me. I'd love to spend the rest of my life helping pastors. If we can help you in any way, we want to do that. Bill and I had lunch yesterday. We talked about some strategic things in Laverne that we've had a chance to do. We would rather, at New Vision, we'd rather be silent partners than anything else, right? I think I'm not anti-churches, I'm not anti-churches taking over other churches and doing satellite camp. I'm not anti-that. That works in so many places. Please, right? I'm not anti-that. That's just not really who, we've done that. But that's just not really who I am. I want to see you guys succeed. To be honest, here's what I believe. I believe the smaller and mid-sized churches on the other side of COVID are going to be the ones most positioned to really reach our community for Christ. For a lot of different reasons. Number one, people are just going to feel more comfortable in that environment, right? But here's the problem. Young families, watch this. Young families aren't going to sacrifice their children. People don't come to New Vision because the preaching's better than it is at your place. They don't. They come to New Vision because we have more stuff for preschoolers, children, students, and college students. That's the reason, right? That's the reason. So we have to figure out how to equip you so that you have got a dog in that hunt, so that young families don't have to sacrifice that there's something there. And that's where partnerships are going to be so crucial in order to do that. And it can happen. There are creative ways that we can do that. For instance, I'm random. It's almost up. My time's almost out. I'm sorry. Bill and I were talking about, can I say this?
Yeah.
All right.
5, 10 minutes.
All right. Well, 5 or 10.
That's a big difference.
That's why I like talking to middle schoolers better. 5. I know, Wes. Yeah.
You just wasted a minute.
Yeah. Don't count that minute. Yeah. So Bill's talking about Bible school's coming. What are we going to do? What are we going to do at Bible school? And so we're thinking, all right. So we're doing Bible school this year. It's going to be a little bit different. We're doing something we did it last year. We had to pivot called Rock the Blocks. Just to be honest, it's just an old school backyard Bible club. Remember those? Mm-hmm. Just rebranded it, and it just looks good. It's just backyard Bible clubs. So we said to Bill, we're making 100 boxes. We got backyard Bible club in a box, and let's get 5 volunteers at First Baptist Laverne. You commit to 5, and we'll give you everything you need to succeed, right? And that's what we're talking about, partnership. So now Bill's got a dog in the hunt. Young family comes, we got Rock the Block this summer, and they look at it, and they don't have to go somewhere, so they've got something for their kids. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what needs to happen. Develop these partnerships as it relates. And so, what was I even talking about? Finding your next gear in ministry. Don't miss this time. Again, don't spend all of our time thinking about, man, our church, we can't go back to normal as a church. Think about this. I can't go back to normal as a leader. What is going to be my next gear? How am I going to get there? How am I going to be able to do ministry differently? And I think that will help you. And again, that doesn't mean that it's not working harder. That's not the answer. It's really working smarter. It's being more strategic in how you do things. Hospital visitation, funerals, weddings. That's the stuff that will eat your lunch, won't it? That's really tough. But it is really raising up other leaders around you, giving them, great credibility among your people. You got to let them preach some, and then you let them do that, and they'll start taking some weddings. They'll start taking some funerals. One of the things that we did that got me out of doing a wedding every Saturday. You want to talk about something that'll kill your marriage? A wedding every Saturday will kill your marriage, right? You don't want to. Your wife doesn't want to be married to you after that, right? So we just said, you know what, we've got somebody here that does all of our premarital counseling with just different staff members. So we ask you to meet with them 3 times. And then after that, the 4th time, we'll talk about the wedding. Well, after 3 times, I just fell in love with who was doing their counseling, and they did their wedding. I don't do weddings anymore, right? Because of that, we just spread it out among staff. It's just a really simple thing. Another thing, just a quick tip, 2 minutes left, Wes. when people ask you something on Sunday morning, people think about church 5 minutes before they get there and 5 minutes after they leave, right? And they ask you a question, brother, I need you to do this for me this week, or they ask you something, say, send me an email tomorrow. Would you send me an email because I'll forget about it? 90% of the people won't send you an email, right? Because they forgot about it too, and you're kind of off the hook. I agreed 2 years ago to a wedding on the 23rd of December in Cleveland, Tennessee, in the hallway in between services. Right? I got home and I told my wife, I said, I agreed to this wedding, so and so. And she said, are you serious? That's our family Christmas. And I said, well, I told him I was going to do it. And she said, I'm leaving you. I mean, this is and now I just say, right, she didn't. But now I just say, send me an email. If you can just send me an email, and half the time they don't, and it gives me a time to think of an excuse after that. But anyways, hospital list, we have our staff has a rotation. I call people and I text people on the crisis stuff. It's more than a call, send multiple texts. And I can do a lot more of that than run around to the hospital. So I'm just telling you, you don't have to do what I do, but just find your rhythm. And then the last thing I would say, so my message to this was to find your lanes, find your next gear, and number 3, make critical changes. This is a time for change. We all agree with that. Change is hard. COVID has given us some cover to make changes, and we've tried to make some changes through COVID. I mean, again, I don't go to coffee shops anymore. If you want to talk, hey, let's get together and have coffee. I just say, hey, grab your glove, let's play catch. Just another way to meet that is invigorating for me. Now, we don't do we're not going to do bulletins anymore. If I could tell you why we didn't do bulletins because of COVID, the amount of money that we're saving by just doing a digital bulletin, having them kind of pull it up on their phone or print those, it's a lot of money. And people are just used to using that. And so I mean, after it's over, I don't think we'll have any complaints. But there's just a lot of changes that you can make right now. A couple that we've made, and then I'll shut up. And these won't be things that you. I talked about Rock the Block, committee meetings, like committee meetings, deacons, or your building committee or vision team, whatever. Those kind of meetings. We try to do one of those in person now and one of those online. It is so much easier. Those meetings are faster. Like there are 5 key committees that I have to meet with every single month. When we do a Zoom meeting, we get greater attendance and the meeting is shorter, right? In the time it would take me to drive over to the church and drive back, I've already had that meeting. Now, I don't think you can have every one of them on Zoom, right? But just break them up, and that's buying me some time. And they like it better, right? They like that better. Committee members do. So that's a change that we make that I think we're going to keep. Architecture, can I say that we've made some changes to our facilities during this time? Guys, listen, architecture matters. The look matters. This is not going to go over well, but that's okay. Don't make getting out of debt the highest value in your church. You can disagree with me. That's Dave Ramsey stuff, right? I mean, it is the cheapest time in the history of our life to borrow money. They're giving money away right now, right? And I know, I can see your looks, we're out of debt. But we made a mistake. We made debt a bigger value than kingdom expansion. It was a mistake we made, and we got painted into a corner with that, right? Most everybody disagrees with me about that. That's okay. But listen, if you could do it, this is a great time to borrow money and change the look of your facility a little bit, because if you want to reach young families, the look counts. It matters. I mean, I stopped to get gas last night at Twice Daily. You've been to a Twice Daily lately? I mean, there's a pergola out back where you can have coffee. The inside of it is crazy. I'm driving up from San Antonio about a month ago. Have you seen the gas stations in Texas called Buc-ee's? You ever seen one of those? I mean, people are coming, they pull in there by the thousands. It's not a truck stop, it's just a gas station, and you get anything. It looks amazing, it's clean, it's nice, and people it's a destination. It's a gas station that is a destination because they thought about the look, right? And so it's a great time to make some changes, really, to the way your facility even looks in the midst of this. And so I think that's an important thing. And then polity, if there's anything that just kills our churches, it's just bad polity. If there's ever a chance to look at our polity and how we're structured, because you can let 1 or 2 people that are more into tradition than they are the kingdom of God, and they can ruin our churches. It happens all day, every day. It doesn't matter if you're in Tennessee or Texas, it's happening. And so bad polity will kill you. But if there's a chance to make some changes, that's a great thing. Thank you guys for listening. I went over, but shocker alert. So do we want to field questions
Yeah,
now?
so this part, let's just stay where we're at.
Don't be bossy about it.
Questions, just some things that come to your mind as Brady was speaking that you would like to ask him.
Wes, just a comment, not
Sure.
necessarily a question. We've always had problems having enough people for our business meetings. And we started doing business meeting email. Email, here's what we're gonna be voting on, have any questions, let us know, then you vote. You know, and our people we used to have like 10 or 15, we got 30 or plus.
Right.
And they're saying, let's keep doing that.
Right.
Everybody gets the information instead of just a few who show up. And the budget and everything is there. And so now, of course, our business meetings have been very friendly over the last 5 or 10 years, and that makes a difference. But just a word, it's become a very simple thing for business meeting now. And more people are saying it. Just
Do you even do, when you talk about a business meeting, if it's on financing or budget, do you still do all that online?
we send all the financial information in the email. They get everything that they
But
would
when
get.
you're voting your new budget, you're doing that online as well and stuff?
We do.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah, because we give them 3 days to ask questions. And if there's enough questions, we can't do the business meeting, we obviously stop, we're not really ready to do this. But it's just flown, we were surprised how quickly, and people just like it.
Yep.
Everybody gets the information now instead of just a few who happen to show up.
You know, the reality is, I found, is that some of the changes that we wanted to make in some of our churches before, and our members were resistant to those changes. Whether those were to eliminate things that we were just doing because we always had to do them, whatever it was. COVID came, made us shut those things down. And the reality is, most of our people did not miss them at all. And if it gives leaders the opportunity and the leverage to permanently make those changes because their people have realized this wasn't needed for my growth, for my discipleship, for the expansion of God's kingdom, whatever it is. It was just energy that was having to be expended on something that really wasn't accomplishing any purpose. COVID created the opportunity for us to do something about that. I think one of the dangers is that one of the things that we thought was going to be a problem early on, I know I did, was the finances. But generally that hasn't been a problem. Most churches have done well with the finances. Now the danger with that is some of the members of your churches who kind of look at finances as the highest value will say, there's no need to change, we'll just go back to what we were before. And the finance, because the finances continue to go well, they may not see the significance of the need for change. And so you got to be careful. We celebrate, we praise God that the finances have done well, but they can also be a cover for real issues that need to be addressed, that COVID gives you an opportunity to do. But some of your people are going to be like rubber bands, and COVID kind of stretched them a little bit. But if we're not there to take advantage of that and leverage that change, then that rubber band's going to come back. Yeah.
Brady, you talked some about, and this is kind of the reality of the Easter reality that is in front of us, and then really up until summer, because summer, at least for us and probably for most folks, is you see a slump in the summer once June and July hit. But as folks are starting to come back, especially older seniors that are coming back now that they're getting their second vaccine, some of the space things that you did, seating and that kind of thing, are beginning to bump up against capacity realities. And so that tension of how do we continue to maintain what would be recommended versus what may be needed now. So for any guys, just curious as to how folks are thinking or dealing with that.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. What we have noticed really quickly is it's reversed for us. In the last couple of weeks, we're hearing more people that were coming because it was smaller and felt safer. Now as more people are coming back and not everybody's wearing masks, they've stopped coming. You know, so we've seen a flip. This is an impossible situation to lead in. It doesn't matter what you do, there's going to be an unintended consequence, it seems like. So, you know, for us, we're doing like an outdoor service. If the weather's good on Easter at 7 o'clock in the morning. We do Thursday night, like we did Thursday night. This is like a colossal, we failed into something that worked. Like we thought travel, this is trying to answer your question. Travel sports are are, whether you like them or not, they just are. And so we thought Thursday night families that do travel sports could come and worship on Thursday night, and that was our answer. We maybe reached one family do that. We just found there was a lot of other reasons that people started, they like Thursday night better. But it's also given some of those folks who have said, you know what, we're gonna start coming on Thursday. We've been coming now, but as people are coming back in, we're less comfortable with that, so we're gonna shift to Thursday. So that's kinda helped us just a little bit. Yes, sir.
I was interested in what you said about the Sunday night things that you did, like, the night of healings, things like that.
Right.
Can you just, share with maybe 2 or 3 more things that you've done? And do you have a pattern as to how often you try to do something like
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. We've tried to, through COVID, we've tried to say, let's try to do something every 6 or 8 weeks, and some of it has been ministry specific, like different ministries have done something for that night. We've done Night of Healing, we've done just some we did outdoor baptismal service where we had an outdoor baptistry. We did kind of a little concert outside, just some different things that we tried to do to pull people in a safer environment. Again, our goal is trying to get those people who haven't come back to test it a little bit, so. The metrics for us, it used to be, attendance and money were the 2 top metrics. For us, today, we say engagement is the #1 metrics. That's what we're saying to all our staff. Let's get our people engaged in ministry, We've got a servant Saturday that's coming up on the 10th after Easter, and we want a couple thousand people serving. Like, that's an engagement. That's what we keep saying to our staff over and over again. Because we got to get people engaged in ministry. That's how we'll get them back. Pastoral care is going to be, I think that's also how we're going to get this 55%. You're probably doing better than us percentage-wise, but I hope you at least appreciate the fact that I was honest with you. Right? So life's going to happen for that 55%, and so we got to be tethered enough to them to really step in and be able to minister to them when that happens. And so I think that will be a way to pull them back for sure. A business meeting, man, like, this will not go over well. Business meetings every single month. If you vote on everything in the life of a church, you have a church full of people who have lost on issues. So you have a church full of losers. You understand? Losers in a vote. I didn't mean losers in life. And so they all got an axe to grind. We have one a year, and we vote on our leadership council. It's church approved. And then they vote on every single issue. So those things don't go to the church floor every single month so we can argue about this, that, and the other. They elect these people, and those folks do that. Doesn't work for everybody, but preschools, parking, and polity, the 3 Ps. Got to have great preschool space, you got to be able to park people, and you got to have great polity. And man, you have to major on those. I believe. There are other things too, of course.
I think the main thing that rang with me was the preschool care. Anytime we try to do something for younger adults, they're always, in our size church, the ones who do everything. So what we're gonna do is half of them to watch the kids while the other half, do it. And so that's, boy, it'd be great if we had just a group of folks that said, we're gonna rent you out some preschool care people.
Do you have money in the bank?
A little bit.
We pay for some child care. We staff ours with volunteers mostly, but some of ours, we pay for that.
Just tied to that, Brady, if our churches had a list of, here's some people that are paid childcare workers that you can call on, they're approved to work for you. That would be, because a lot of times we're at that point. We've hired people from MTSU to come over to watch the kids when we had special small group events.
My opinion, we've got to reach young families, or you're just in a one-generational church and you're in a death cycle.
And childcare is the issue.
They won't come back.
Yeah.
They'll give you one Sunday if it's a great experience for their children. I don't care how great your message is. I don't care how great your worship is. They're not coming back.
That would be a good associational thing to come up with a list of, here's pre-approved preschool people that you could hire to come to your church while you're, so much
background check.
Yeah. And I'm speaking everybody understands I'm speaking in generalities up here. Everybody can sit up here and wax eloquent, right? Do you understand? I do think that's a principle that we have to think about.
We can't get together and fight every month, or we'll do.
Yeah. It'll kill us. It has. You just study churches. It has. That's not even debatable anymore. So.
COVID has revealed about the mission field that we're in. I mean, have you seen, have there been some things that's come to your attention, that's been greater understanding that you've had just this year with COVID as far as what our mission feels like?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because I got up last night at about 11 o'clock and typed this into my phone so I wouldn't forget it, and I forgot it. Everybody knows more anxiety among younger people. We've been blown away at the depression and anxiety of college students, high school students, children. It's unbelievable, right? And so we have biblical counseling ministry. Mickey's involved in it. So we have a guy on our staff. Our executive pastor just transitioned to this a couple years ago. So we shut our counseling center down. We had a counseling center. We do 75, 80 hours a week there. And it drifted away. It's the drift. It drifted away from the gospel. So we just shut it down and we relaunched it. We just trained folks in the church to be biblical counselors. And people have fear. To answer your question, more fear than normal because of COVID. Counseling, biblical counseling inside your church, I think is going to be one of the greatest outreach opportunities that we have going forward. People with their marriage, people with anxiety among their children, right? Substance abuse, anything you can do in that area of, people finding freedom to alcohol, drug abuse. There's all kinds of programs that work with that. Anything you can do to provide some counseling there, marriage, kids, Mickey will correct me, half of our folks that we see on a weekly basis aren't a part of our church. They just found out, from the community that we have that, and so they come in, right? And we do a sliding scale, and they pay a little bit for that, so we're able to compensate those folks. And these are people that are just school teachers, right? They work here, and they pick up a few hours. They've gone through some training, and we'll do this for you. We will. If you want some people trained in your church, we'll give you all the resources. And our Ray Moss, who's on our staff, he'll be there tomorrow. They've got a pastor in from Arkansas this week doing an intensive. It's just so. It is going to be a tremendous opportunity, and churches are positioned greatly to attack that. Right? Does that answer your question? That's one thing.
Yeah.
One question I had with the re-entry. What have you experienced as far as new people coming? Are they anxious about coming into the environment, or is it more so the older people coming back? And I'm not talking about oldest years, but new people. Are you seeing people say, "Well, I'd come, but I really feel uncomfortable"?
Yeah. Again, we have 6 buckets of people that we've identified that we're trying to reach. So to answer your question, we haven't seen a ton of new people from our community start worshiping with us through this. The biggest percentage have come folks have just been watching us online because somebody in their family or friend kind of flipped that to them. So we've seen a little bit of increase in that, but we don't have like a great story.
What are your buckets?
So the first guy is just I hope I can get these right. the first guy or gal, they may be elderly and they have some underlying issues, and so they're not coming back right now. So we have to be. My point is we have to be careful with our language that we don't alienate them. I am so afraid that we're going to say some things during this. It's going to really alienate some people. So that's one bucket. These are we've always had shut-ins. We just have more of them right now. We have some. The second is just the temporarily sidelined. They're a mom who wakes up and her 8-year-old has an ear infection, and so she just stays at home. So we have to. She can't come that day. We have a young couple who is going to Knoxville because their best friend's getting married over the weekend, and so they're staying there, right? And so that's just like a circumstantial situation. Gosh, I wish I could remember the rest of these. But my point is, we have to think about our language, and we can't be offensive to these different groupings of people, so we have to identify some of them. We have the comfort crowd. That's the fourth. They're just more comfortable. You guys are hearing this. We hear this a lot, man. We're in our pajama pants and are drinking our cup of coffee, and we're 45 minutes in and out, and we've done church.
Yeah.
Now that's the crowd we want to speak to. They need to come back. but in speaking to them, we can't alienate the others, right? And so, that's really hard. So we're trying to talk about that all the time, as it relates to.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday in staff meeting and thinking about fall, you know, and it was in a meeting a while back with some other pastors here, and we're having a similar conversation of, you know, when is there gonna be a time? I'd always thought it was fall, but now that, you know, everybody can get vaccine as of eligible, my wife who's a pharmacist would tell you availability and eligibility are two very different things when it comes to the vaccine, but, you know, that maybe that's pushed more forward, but in the fall, having an opportunity to a kind of a guilt-free messaging is key of, it's just time for everybody to come back. For whatever reason you were gone, I'm not trying to guilt you because I've seen you on Facebook and I know you're not really quarantining. You know, you say you are, but I know you're not. You're just quarantining from church. You know, so is there an opportunity to have so do y'all have any kind of intent for that as far as hey, it's time for everybody to come back?
Yeah, we're putting a series together called Accelerate. And so Accelerate is just an old fundamentals of the church, right? So it is just when it's time to push the gas, that's what we're saying, because I think we are a couple months away from really being able to do that. So it's kind of just a picture of a drag strip, like, you know, red, yellow, green. We're probably yellow right now, but green's coming. So when do we really ramp up the language and say, it's time to push the gas? We have pivoted, and we're not going to do that sermon series on Sunday morning. We're going to do 4 weeks of just shorts, video, a 10-minute messaging on it's time to accelerate in our worship. It's time to accelerate in community, right? That's number 2, trying to accelerate in our serving. Right, all these things, and so we're gonna try it that way, and sort of push that stuff out. So I don't know if it'll work, but that's our thought. The 5th group, they're coming to me now. It's slower. The 5th group are people that we have picked up through COVID that just watch online. We had a baptism from Boston. A guy flew down who had watched us because a friend sent it to him in Boston. He came to faith in Christ, and this will get me in trouble with you guys theologically, I'm sure. He flew to Murfreesboro on his own dime and wanted to be baptized, and we baptized him. Now we are talking to him specifically about how he finds a local church. He's involved in a Zoom group. One of our guys leads a group. In that group, he's got a guy from Boston. He's got a guy from Portland, Our Lady from Portland. He has some people here in Murfreesboro, and they just do a group every single week, and they're spread out all over the United States. I think that's the coolest thing, right? Now again, here's what we're thinking. Instead of us saying, dude, you need to get a church in Boston. Of course he does. We would agree with that. We want his small group leader to begin to share that because he's got the closest relationship with him, right? Instead of me saying, you know, because in fact, we're punishing him for taking a good step of obedience, right? I mean, here's a guy, he's watching, right? He's watching and he's listening to the gospel, and then we just want to, you know, I kind of like, be careful. So the small group leader is encouraging and showing him some churches in the area that he can be involved in. So I gave you 5 and 6. I'll owe you one more. If you knew how limited my bandwidth was, you'd be really impressed. That's like awesome for me.
Other questions, guys? Or comments? Maybe some things that you're doing or you're planning to do through COVID, emerging from COVID, during COVID. Just share some things that you're doing or are going to do, real quickly.
Wes, one of the things I'm going to start right after Easter, we all feel like the Lord's coming back soon, but what are we prepared to say to the people we're going to leave behind? And that's going to be the focus. Who's your one, which you know about that. But according to my understanding of prophecy, when the rapture takes place, the United States is going to be destroyed within weeks, because I see us as the great harlot. So what are those people that are lost friends and family that are so close, and when we disappear, they're going to realize this is real? What do they need to have in hand that they can look at immediately and know what they need to do now? That's what I'm going to be doing in May.
One thing we're doing currently, we had gotten the idea from Sam Greer, what he's doing out, I guess in Chattanooga, and I think Long Hollow did this too, but we started out last year with incredible amounts of baptism and salvation, and it was really encouraging. Probably would have had the biggest year ever for baptisms, and then COVID hit, and and we baptized nobody for months throughout the process. So when we started back, just that, what is the church about? What is it that we're called to do? What is it we're about? So we came up with the idea of the book of Acts for the second time, and in there we had the Greek word diaspora. The church was dispersed, and so Kelvin, our worship guy, had a countdown each week that plays, and so we end our service having people look up at the screen again, and it says 6 days, however many hours and minutes until we gather again. So we're dispersed, and we did that for a few weeks, and when you come back to church, the countdown's continuing, or at least it looks like it's continuing. The same countdown, the same look, the same feel, until service starts when we're gathered again. And we mentioned, we're gathered again, right? It's been 7 days, the church is gathered, and so we start with prayer and start the service. And then as we moved into Acts chapter 6, and the word diaspora there in the original language, our version says scattered, so the scattered. And when we preached that sermon, we set up a display in the lobby that I did again from Sam Greer. And it's basically kind of like seed bags, I guess you would say, on each side, but they're clear. And there's 2 of them, and there's 2 sets of ping pong balls. The white ones are for spiritual conversations. And so during that 6 days, so many hours, we're asking our people to have spiritual conversations. We define that. You're sharing your testimony, you're sharing the gospel. For some of you, you've never prayed out loud with anybody. You go to your workplace, you go to your campus, someone's sharing with you what's going on in their life. You say, do you mind if I pray with you right now? And you pray with them. That's a spiritual conversation. So we defined those 3 things. And they started throwing ping pong balls in. And then we had a box of blue ping pong balls that represent those spiritual conversations that have led to someone receiving Christ and following through baptism. And it was so cool to start seeing. I think right now there's like 5. We've been doing it for how many weeks? Maybe a month? Maybe?
Yeah, about 4 weeks.
Yeah, 4 weeks. And so we've seen 5 of those, just able to celebrate. It's accountability for us. It's reminders for us. Some of them are parents who've been reminded to talk to their older children about Christ. Some of them have been in the workplace. But I don't know, for us, it's just been really cool to have that display set up and to see what God is doing. Again, that accountability, those reminders, for us is encouraging. To be able to see the number of balls, but obviously we get most excited about the blue ones and following through with those. And God has been gracious in that. I think we baptized the first Sunday of the month, the second Sunday of the month. We did the third, and then like 3 lined up for that next Sunday, the last Sunday of the month. So it's kind of exciting. And then lastly, I would just say we appreciated COVID in some sense that I think it's caused us as staff to be spiritually more healthy. Some time to focus on that. And then the partnerships. I think we've always kind of been about partnerships, but it has really accelerated that. Started with you guys. I praise you guys a lot. We used during COVID a lot of their worship videos, and that was incredible. They were done well. We did some of our own, but we mixed in, and then we shared ours with other churches, and they used some of ours and some of yours, and just that partnership has really been actually kind of fun. We struggled with our live streaming. We couldn't figure out what was going on. I mean, we tried everything, and in-house, finally we just called some guys at New Vision and said, "Hey, can you just come?" And they had a big women's event, wasn't it?
I think so,
They
yeah.
were working on a big women's event, and so I know they were stressed. They had lunch with us. They gave us a tour of their facility, which is how we knew how stressed they were about the women's event coming up. And then they came over to our church, and they went through every detail of our setup. Yes, we would have done it the same way. You're on track. The only thing they could figure out was maybe it was a camera. And so they brought us back to New Vision, and they gave us a camera. They said, use our camera. We set the camera, and it worked. We used it for, we probably used it 6 or 7 months before we bought our own camera, right? Like we finally gave in and bought our own camera and took theirs back, to them. And I don't know, there's just been something really beautiful about that relationship that's reminded us that we're not the only ones in it. So
They buy your lunch, or they make you guys buy?
we bought their lunch.
Oh. That's our guys.
John Shepherd.
Brady, one last question I have for you is that you mentioned that you believe small and mid-sized churches are better positioned to post-COVID, coming out of COVID. Why do you say that?
I think, number one, I think it's what people want. I mean, we hear it all the time from people. People come, I hear this all the time from folks. We came to New Vision and we knew we wanted to come to a big church. We hear that all the time. I think inherently, people like a more mid-size or smaller church. That's not everybody, but I think that's part of it. They like things local, and we have people who come from the region, different areas. I think people want to stay in their local community. They live in Las Casas, they don't want to drive past you guys. They want to be in their community because their kids go to school with folks there, so they like that. And then third, post-COVID, I mean, it's going to be, everybody still feels, we all still feel awkward, right? I mean, you shake hands, now do you go use hand sanitizer? What do you do? I mean, being in a large room where there's 1,600 people that's going to be weird. People they're not going to go for that. So, mid-size, more agile, safer environment is really going to be the deal. And, we have to get to that mindset where when you guys win, we win. Like, we're in this whole thing together. And so, and I promise you, if we can help you guys, you've listened to me, we don't have the answers. But if we can help you with technology, we have people that can do that. Preschool, children. If you want somebody, we have a preaching lab. We have some young guys who are working every single week on preaching. One of our staff members works with that. If you want somebody to come and give you a week off or so, we can help you with that. Biblical counseling, if you want some help with that, because that's a great outreach opportunity, do that. One quick thing, we just started a Next Steps phone during COVID because we wanted real-time connection for people. So 615-25-STEPS, you can call that from 6 in the morning to 10 at night, and there's a staff member that has it every day, a different staff member. And so that's been kind of cool. People just like that connectivity, just to be able in real time to call. So yeah, that's why I think if the small church and the mid-sized church that wins in this is the church is open to some partnership, has great preschool, or has preschool children, student ministry stuff. I think has some polity changes that makes them aggressive. I think we're going to see some amazing wins in that. So,
that's good stuff. All right, guys. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Brady. That was really good. Thank you. I really appreciate. Just the first time I met Brady, I could tell that he is not trying to hide what they're doing at New Vision for New Vision's sake only. He wants to share and he wants to partner. And you heard that expression from him today. And I really believe that it's one of the ways that, one of the jobs of the association is to network and connect, and to connect churches with need, with churches that have resources, and that's not all financial situations. I'm talking about training and other things that Brady talked about. And so that's, we work together like that, we're all going to be stronger. And I think there's a wonderful place for small, mid-sized churches. But they've got to be healthy, small, and mid-sized churches. And healthy and practical in doing some of the things that he just shared about. And that's the future, really, that's the future of the progress of the kingdom. If we don't have good, healthy, small, mid-sized churches, the big churches are not going to be able to do this by themselves. And so we've got to have that, and that's going to be obviously one of the focuses that we have. Any other questions? Couple announcements, just to remind you, the next thing that we have coming up as far as training will be the crossover training. NAM's going to be here. A NAM representative will be here on April the 14th from 9:30 to 11:30. I believe that's the right time. Make sure. Yeah, that's right. So April 14th, 9:30 to 11:30. This is for pastors and leaders of the churches to train them basically on how to train their people to do crossover events. And so the whole idea is to kind of get us externally focused as we move towards the convention that's coming up. June 12th will be evangelistic events. as many of our churches as possible participating in those events. Now, let me say, it doesn't have to be just June 12th. It could be the whole week previous to that. But what we're just trying to do is to get as many churches as possible involved in outreach. That's what the training's for, is to say, what does that look like? What does that look like? What does a crossover event look like? So, and then June 13th on a Sunday, who's your one rallies on Sunday morning in as many churches as possible. And then we'll report kind of what our numbers are back to now. So anyhow, the next event though is April 14th here, and we'll have something online where you can register for that. So I just want to encourage you in that. Okay, any other thing? Yes?
Tomorrow, the Baptist Association of Christian Educators base, they're doing a conference on transitions. It is $29, it's all online, but the Tennessee Convention has partnered, and if you'll get, I can give you the portal, and you can use the discount code and get it for free. Kerry Newhoff is one of the key leaders.
Right.
The president of New Orleans Seminary is going to speak, one of the Barna guys are going to speak, plus there's a lot of breakouts.
Yeah.
You can go, it's from 8 to 5 tomorrow. You can be a part of that, but you'll also, for a year, you'll have access to all of this, where you'll be able to download it and watch it at your own time. They also have a lot of breakouts. Kim Brady is doing a couple of breakouts, other folks as well. John McClendon, who's in this association, is the head of base.
Right.
He's the executive director. So if you're interested in that, if you let me know, I'll give you the connection where you can go in the portal. You have to register, but again, if you use the priority code, it won't cost you anything.
Right. And if you look at your emails that I've sent out to you,
Yeah,
I'll send something out on that has a link where you can register. Anybody else? Well, thanks guys for being here for our first roundtable. Hope you gained some things, and let's just keep working together, keep praying. Let's take advantage of the times that we live. Let's look towards going into that fall with all kinds of momentum, the momentum of God behind us, and just thinking out how we need to emerge from COVID in the right position to expand God's kingdom. So let me close this in prayer, and then you'll be dismissed. Lord, thank you so much just for the opportunities that we've had to come together, fellowship with one another, just connect with brothers, and Lord, just to hear some good wisdom, Father, as far as navigating COVID and kind of navigating coming out of COVID. Lord, I pray you help these men as they lead their churches. Give them wisdom, give them courage, just give them the right pace. Lord, just guide them as they guide their churches through this very pivotal time. It's a very difficult year. Mm-hmm. And I just pray, Lord, I know that we have guys here that have been discouraged. Maybe some have been depressed. Some are weary or just tired. Lord, I just pray that you would just pour out on them a super abundant amount of your grace and your strength. I do pray that the next year of ministry for them will be well thought out. Lord, that some of the changes that they've experienced during COVID that were good and healthy and right, Lord, will become permanent. And Lord, I just pray that you'll just surround them with your love. Let them know, first and foremost, their identity is in you. Their identity is not in their success, not in how large or how small their church is. Their identity is in Christ, and I pray that they'll always go back to that. Lord, we love you. Thank you for the opportunity that we had, the things that we've been able to learn. Go with us in Jesus' name. Amen. You can stay around as long as you want. I think